begin recording. All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to this month's Montgomery for All meeting, and thank you so much for coming tonight. If you can, put in the chat your name, pronouns, any relevant groups you're a part of, any other information that you think is important for people to know, where you live. And because we don't have enough time for everybody to go around introducing themselves. So that will be one way for people to get to know one another. And I will go ahead and launch our first poll, which is, have you ever testified before a public body before? That can include the county council, the planning board, the school board, Congress. We live in Montgomery County, so several of you might be people who have jobs where you have to testify before Congress. Anything like that. All right, in the polling there. So it looks like a lot of you have, which is great, means that you're experienced with all of this, but several of you haven't. Oh, let's see, did I share that? Okay, I'm sharing those polling results now. All right, and I have a second question. Oop, not that one. What is your comfort level with public speaking? 1 is that you hate public speaking. 5 is that you love it. You live to speak in front of large crowds. You might want to run for office someday. All right, looks like most people have voted. And we've got most people saying that it's okay. They're all right with it. 4 that kind of maybe even like it. I'm not even sure where I'd put myself there. Maybe like a 3.5. I still get pretty nervous. So a lot of people who have testified before, hopefully you can learn something new tonight, and who feel pretty comfortable public speaking. And one of the great things, or I shouldn't say one of the great things, but one of the great things about testifying virtually as a side effect of the current situation that the world is in right now, with things being virtual, is that it's a little less intimidating to testify, at least I find, before a public body when you're just sitting in your apartment on the phone. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for answering those questions. This is the agenda for tonight's meeting. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Thrive 2050 if you don't know about it. And then we're going to go through basically the steps of testifying. So how to sign up, what to expect, the structure of testimony, the content for that testimony, and then we'll have hopefully some time at the end for you to work on actually writing your testimony. And Emily, since I know that you have access to this presentation has some helpful content towards the end about different parts of Thrive 2050. So if you're somebody who feels very highly informed, you just kind of want to have this on in the background, but you would like to find our guidance on how to testify for Thrive 2050s and write your content. Emily, if you could put this presentation in the chat in the view only form, that would be super helpful so that people can, if they would like, go ahead and get started writing now. So we'll have plenty of opportunities to ask questions tonight as well. You're welcome to, during the question and answer portions, there'll be a slide that pops up. Take yourself off mute, ask your question, or put it in the chat. So quickly, a little bit about the Coalition for Smarter Growth, and I guess I should introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name is Jane Lyons, and I'm the Maryland Advocacy Manager for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We are a regional advocacy nonprofit, and we work on the interconnected issues of housing, land use, and transit. We have a vision for a network of walkable, inclusive, and transit-oriented communities. So recently, we've advocated for and won bus rapid transit routes, including the Route 29 first bus rapid transit route in Montgomery County that opened yesterday. The Purple Line, yes, thank you, Jeff. I haven't gotten a chance to ride it yet, but I'm very excited to do so soon. And accessory dwelling units, but that's really only a small portion of our advocacy in Montgomery County. As a lot of you know, we do a lot more than that as well. So about Montgomery for All. So Montgomery for All is a grassroots group organized by CSG, meaning me. And Montgomery for All is a grassroots community group that is advocating for a general plan update that paves the way for a more equitable, prosperous, and sustainable future. We have a platform that you can read online, and that includes a lot of different things that aren't listed here, but sort of some of the mainline stuff is more housing options, protections for vulnerable communities, providing equitable, safe access to amenities, and building a world-class transit network. That's a little bit about us. You right now are at our October monthly meeting, and our November monthly meeting will be the Thrive 2050 public hearing at the Planning Board. So this will all flow together nicely. So what is a general plan? The general plan looks at the entire county, unlike a master plan, which only looks at maybe part of Silver Spring or downtown Bethesda. And it determines how and where we will grow for the next 30 or more years. It requires implementation, so it's not going to change zoning or other policies on its own, but it will guide the planning department's entire work program and the county council's policy agenda on issues that are related to housing, transportation, land use, and environmental protection. So it's really important because we've seen that the way that we've grown over the past several decades has exacerbated segregation, the east-west racial and socioeconomic divide, as well as climate change. We have a very auto-dependent lifestyle that has led to really high transportation emissions and the degradation of our natural landscapes. And so we need to set the county on a new course to create neighborhoods that are mixed income, that are diverse, sustainable, and prosperous. So a little bit about the history. A lot of you probably know this, so I'll go through it pretty quick. The first Montgomery County General Plan was published in 1964 with an update in 1969. It was called On Wedges and Corridors. It had a refinement of the goals and objectives in that wonderful Law and Order font in 1993. And so this is really the first time here in 2020 and 2021 when it will be finalized that the general plan for the county has been updated comprehensively since the 1960s. And you don't have to have been around since the 1960s to know that a lot has changed. So there's a lot of new stuff to talk about. This is basically what came out of those general plans, this wedges and corridors idea that was really finalized and that refined in that 1993 update. So here you see the urban ring around the Beltway, and then these corridor cities along the I-270 corridor. So Rockville, Gaithersburg, Germantown, Clarksburg. And then you have the suburban communities, residential wedge, and the agricultural wedge, aka the agricultural reserve. So this sort of set out the county's entire growth pattern, and more or less we've been pretty good at following it, but there's still a lot that can be improved. There we go. So Thrive 2050, or the full name Thrive Montgomery 2050, is the title of this comprehensive update to the general plan. And so the general plan is looking at these 8 major issues, which are the in the dark blue boxes here. They include affordability, safe and efficient travel, diverse economies, and all of these issues are being looked at through these 3 lenses of economic health, community equity, and environmental resilience. Because it's not enough to just have a chapter about equity, because equity is something that that touches every single one of these issues and needs to be thought of in every single one of these policy decisions, along with how it affects our economy and our environmental resilience and adaptation and mitigation and resilience of climate change. So the timeline, this process has been going on for a little bit over a year now at this point, which is pretty mind-boggling. So from this point on, there are pretty much 2 phases that the plan's going to go through. There's a draft that exists right now that came out of a lot of community engagement and was written by the staff of the planning department. And so there's now the planning board phase and the county council phase, and they kind of mirror each other with how the process works. First, there's always a public hearing, And then there are a series of work sessions where either the committee or the body itself, in the case of the planning board, will meet to talk about the plan and what they would like to see change. And so they'll make their amendments to it, hopefully based on the public feedback that they hear in the public hearing. And then they have a final vote. So that will happen with the planning board, and then it will happen with the county council. We're not exactly sure when the final county council vote will be, but likely it will be sometime this summer. So that will come faster than you think, given how time flows during COVID. So why testify? As you can see from that timeline, there are really only 2 guaranteed opportunities for you to speak directly to decision makers, and that being the planning board, which is 5 people, and the county council, which is 9 people. You can write them letters, you can write them emails. There's always the opportunity to send them as much content you want that way. But public hearings are really amazing in that this is your opportunity where you have their attention and they hear your voice. You get to tell your story to these decision makers. And as we heard last time when George Leventhal was here in September for our advocacy training, public officials respond to the people that they hear from, especially on the local level. If you get 60 people sending you an angry email about something, you're probably going to want to do something about it. And if you hopefully have 60 people who are telling you something really positive that they want to see happen in this general plan, you'll be inclined to go forward with it. So that's why we're here tonight talking about the importance of testifying and how you can best testify. So any questions before we get going? I see that Emily put the presentation in the chat. Thank you for that, Emily. Okay, if no questions, then I will move forward. All right, so first we're going to talk about how to sign up to testify. So there are really 3 steps. You fill out a form. You go to this website, which we link to you the slides, and we'll send them out via email afterwards again so that you have this. You go to this link, you click on which item you want to testify to speak on. So for example, when the item is posted, when it's posted 10 days prior to the public hearing itself, I tried to email the IT department to see if they could get the link to sign up to testify extra early so that we could all actually together sign up to testify tonight, but I don't think they were able to do that. And then 3, you fill out your information. So it's a pretty straightforward process, and I'm going to show you right now how to do it. I have the tab all open and everything. So this is where that link will take you to. We're on the Montgomery County Planning Board's website on their sign up to testify form. They have some information about testifying while social distancing. So there's even more information there for you to read through. And so then it has a list of their upcoming meetings and the items that will be open for public testimony in each of them. And like I said, they only include the items that are like 10 days out from now, which is why you can only see the items for their October 22nd meeting. The planning board meets every Thursday, so it's always on that Thursday date. So for example, if I wanted to testify on whatever this item 6 is on October 22nd, I would select that. I would fill out my speaker information, so my first and last name. I would probably put the Coalition for Smarter Growth here with the group that I'm affiliated with, but you would not because you would be an individual. Then you put your address, your phone number, your email, and putting your email is really important because that's how they're going to send you the information about where to call to actually testify. Subject of testimony will be Thrive 2050. You don't have to say that you're representing a group. And speaker type will be individual. Is your testimony in support of any other individual or group testifying at this meeting? No, because you're not talking about a development application, which is sometimes what this is for. And do you need the ability to share a presentation live during your testimony? No, you don't. You just need to really read what you have. Although, if you want to get fancy and make a presentation, you can, that's allowed. Some community members, Greg Kimbrough, did that for a public hearing not that long ago, and I thought it was very effective. So, if you want to make slides or have your face shown, you can. If not, you will be doing this completely through the telephone, through your cell phone. That's all that you need. So then you would click submit. So it is easy as that. Let me go back to the presentation. So let's see, I think I covered all of this, but if you need assistance, you can contact the chair's office, the chair of the planning board's office, or you can reach out to me and I'll help walk you through it. And what's important is that you must sign up by 12 noon on the Wednesday before the public hearing. And the public hearings are always on Thursdays because that's when the planning board meets. And so that means that you will have to sign up to testify by noon on November 18th. All right. So any questions about how to sign up to testify? Let me look at the chat. Yeah, and I'll be reaching out to all of you as soon as they actually allow you to sign up on this form. I'll be reaching out to every single one of you to urge you to sign up. People are allowed to talk for 3 minutes. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Interesting. The county council has recently been 2 minutes, but whenever the last few times that I've done at the planning board, it was 3 minutes. So generally it's 3, but the chair does have discretion. So if we're really successful and we get like 60 people somehow to sign up to testify about Thrive 2050, he might say, whoa, that's a lot of people. We're going to be here all night. So maybe 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. So shooting for 2 minutes, I think is a good thing, or writing your testimony for longer, and then having some places that you can cut it down if you have to adapt. All right. Nothing else there? Move on to the next section. So what to expect when testifying. There's some people testifying before the county council. All right, so on the day of the hearing, and I guess I should note that this is very specific to the planning board. What to expect when testifying before the county council is very different, and I'll say not quite as smooth. So let's see. Yes, so this is for the planning board specifically. On the day of the hearing, you will receive an email with call-in information and a note about what time to call. So we don't know yet exactly what time this public hearing is going to be at, but it is going to be in the evening. So you might be calling around 5 o'clock, 4:45, something like that. We don't quite know yet. But you'll receive that email ahead of time that will tell you what number to call in and what time to call. And a friendly staff person, the planning board's tech IT person, will be there to essentially check you in, which is much nicer than at the county council where you just kind of sit in silence until the hearing actually gets started and you don't actually know if you've done it right, but you will sort of get that confirmation. You can actually talk to somebody and ask them questions if you have any questions. But after that, you go on mute and you wait until the hearing gets started and until your name is called. So during the hearing, the public hearing will begin. You'll hear the chair, Casey Anderson, come on and say, this is a public hearing for Thrive Montgomery 2050. And typically what he tends to do is say the names of like the next few people who are going to be, the order of the next few people who are going to be speaking. Some hearings, if there aren't too many people, he'll just read the full list. And so you'll know a little bit ahead of time when you're going to speak. So you don't have to be constantly on edge that whole time. You might know if there's like, oh, there's 10 people in front of me, so I can do the dishes for a little bit while I listen in. So once he does call your name, you will unmute. You can press *6 to do that, and make sure that you've also hit the unmute button on your phone. And then you have 3 minutes, or as we discussed, maybe 2, depends on the chair and what he says. And if you go over that time, the chair may cut you off, or one of the staff people may cut you off, not because they don't like what you're saying, but because they want to be able to make sure that they can hear everybody. So if that happens, just finish up the sentence that you're on and then say thank you. So some other notes about what to expect. You should have your testimony pulled up and ready to go for whenever your name is called. So have your laptop up and ready, or if you've written your testimony and your notes down, whatever medium works best for you, make sure that you're ready to go. I recommend that you don't try to watch the live stream online because it is actually 30 seconds behind. So if you're trying to watch it and trying to listen on your phone, it will get a little bit confusing, and especially because you don't really need to be watching anything for these. You're not trying to watch a presentation. Would be recommended that you don't necessarily do that. You can do it all just from your phone. And I highly recommend that you submit your written testimony for the official record. So even if you're somebody who is best at speaking off the cuff, which is the opposite of me, I have to write everything down, it's still a great thing to write it all out. And you can make that as long as you want. It doesn't have to be just that 2 minutes. You could write an entire manifesto if you want, which is basically what I'm going to do. And then you can send that written testimony to the chair. Although I should have put it in here that we recommend that you not only send it to the chair, but you also include all of the other 4 planning commissioners on there so that they can see your testimony as well. And it's great to send this, your written testimony in the Wednesday before, so a day ahead of time. So that way they can include it in the public record. And that's really useful for if people are trying to look back and look at the record and say, like, what is the general pulse on how people felt about this? And they have decided to not listen to the public hearing, they're just reading through the written comments, that they'll still, see what you had to say. So yes, oh yes, my last note here is that you can do it as long as you want, but it's definitely great to have that abridged version for when you speak at the public hearing. So any questions about that?
Yeah, I have one. You mentioned that we can make it as long as we want, which is good because there's a lot to, but do you find it's helpful to like start off like, here are the things I want to happen first, or kind of give background? Like, do you find there's more benefit to being like giving some sort of background to what brought you here, or is it better to start with the meat and or something other than those 2 options?
That's a good question. I think, and we'll talk a little bit more about the content of the testimony next, but I think it's good to, as they taught me in policy school and writing policy memos, they always say bluff, bottom line, up front. And I think that's a thing in journalism as well. That you can say who you are, I think is always a good thing to start out with. Like, I am Jane Lyons, I live in Silver Spring, I am a renter. You don't have to say that you're a renter or a homeowner, but whatever identifiers that you associate most strongly with yourself, I think is important to include. And then really whatever the mainline thing is that you want them to take away from your testimony, put that right up front. Because if you do write a manifesto, or even if you've only written a page, you can never guarantee that somebody's going to read everything that you've written. The only time that you can guarantee that they'll hear everything that you say is during the actual public hearing itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's see. Mark said in the chat that it's good to rehearse your oral testimony. Yes, that is a tip that I will have later. Good to have a 2-minute version and a 3-minute version. I agree. I have been right before public hearings before, in fact, before the governor, when I thought I was going to have 3 minutes and then found out I was only going to have 1 minute. So I'm sitting outside of the governor's public hearing room trying to like cross out parts of my testimony. And it still went fine, although the governor did not like what I had to say. But but it's always good to be extra prepared. Any more questions about what to expect?
I guess when you're submitting it, is a Word document like usually the format?
Yeah, Word document's perfect. PDF is fine as well. Definitely. Good question. Any other questions? All right. In that case, we'll talk about the structure of your testimony. So we'll talk about structure and then a little bit more about the content. So 3 parts to testimony. I guess a fun note when I was trying to find the pictures to include with all of this. I was like, well, this isn't quite relevant anymore, but this is what it would look like if you were testifying to the planning board. Although I guess they're not in this building anymore, so maybe it wouldn't. But I was thinking that maybe I needed to take a picture of myself like in my pajamas just on my cell phone, because that's the real image of what it's like to publicly testify these days. All right, so 3 parts to your testimony. You might remember this from grade school, but as with most things, you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And you want to fit it all into, 1 to 3 minutes, which is typically about 1 page, not single spaced, but not quite double spaced either, like the 1.5 spaced. About that will get you into the right amount of time. So the introduction, it's always great to start off by saying thank you or good evening, something like that. State your name for the record, and where you live is always really important. You don't have to give your actual address. You can just say Silver Spring, Wheaton, Rockville. And then, as we were mentioning before, the main point that you want decision makers to hear. So my example here is, good evening and thank you. My name is Jane Lyons and I live in downtown Silver Spring. I support the direction of Thrive 2050, especially the idea of housing being a human right, something like that. So you start off with that, and then you get into the body paragraphs. And there you want to strike a balance between real life data, evidence, examples that you've seen, but as well as your own personal experience and stories. And really those are what's going to be the most compelling, because humans love stories and decision makers also love stories. Because you only have a few minutes to give your in-person testimony, you really want to carefully choose what it is that you're going to say, what's the most relevant, what most supports your stance, and what might be the most unique, especially if there are a lot of other people who are going to be sharing what can you bring to the table that maybe somebody else isn't going to talk about. Or maybe we all want to make sure that we're talking about a similar thing because that we really want to get a point across. So when writing, you can consider a guiding question like, how will this measure impact me and my community? Something as simple as that. And then your conclusion. So you summarize your main points, restate your position, and then say thank you again. So the example here, in conclusion, I would like to see Thrive 2050 include an action to a right to counsel for evictions. More needs to be done if we are to guarantee housing as a human right. Thank you for your time. So in this sort of example, individual Jane is talking about how she's really excited that housing is going to be considered a human right in Thrive 2050, but to really get us there, something that would be critical to include is a right to legal counsel for evictions, which is something that New York has done and is something that real life Jane will be including in CSG's testimony. So it's sort of restating that position, tying it in with what I said the main point was up front, and then finishing by just thanking them for their time. So as Mark was saying, practice beforehand. I find that especially helpful. I like to write everything down and practice at least 2 or 3 times before I speak. But if you feel comfortable, you can adjust what you're going to say based off of what other people have said. I know when I see people testify who are more eloquent and better at speaking off the cuff than I am, if somebody who's gone before them has said something particularly egregious, they will sort of adjust what they're saying to kind of counter whatever has been said before them, to say, well, no, I do think we need more housing because XYZ. So other tips and tricks, and some of these were inspired by me asking people on Twitter what their tips and tricks were. And somebody said that especially if you're going later in the order for the public hearing, that you should make them laugh and you will be remembered for your jokes and for being able to make people laugh. So always be respectful with the jokes that you're making, but it's okay to not be angry and serious all of the time, especially if you think that something's headed in a good direction and you just have some friendly critiques. So one thing, last tip/trick here is to speak clearly and not too fast, which is something I always remind myself to do and maybe don't always do. because that can be hard if you're a little bit nervous. And especially if you're worried about trying to fit everything that you need to say into the allotted time period. And that's where you can remember that you have your written testimony that can be as long as you want it to be. And even in your oral testimony that you provide, you can say, please refer to my written testimony for my full comments, sort of indicating that you have a lot more to say. So any questions about the structure of the testimony?
Hey, Jane, I don't know if I have a question about structure, but if the comments that you're going to give are going to be contentious, do you have any advice there? I mean, you had mentioned you had to sort of shift on the fly in presenting before the governor, and he didn't like what you had to say. But is there any suggestions you might have? If you know that it's not going to be well received, or it might be out of left field.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to remember is that you even if you're saying something contentious or that people might disagree with, that you can still say it in a way that that is respectful, because I think at the end of the day, the people who you're testifying to, whether it's the planning board or the county council, they're people, and I mean, they don't like to be yelled at. And so you'll more likely have them listening and respecting your opinion if you're not coming at them sort of waving your hands and yelling. Although that's not to say that there aren't times where it's good to have a bunch of people come in and yell at the county council about something. But I think you have to be you have to sometimes set maybe your emotions aside and think about like, all right, like how am I best going to be heard and how am I best going to get my points across and listened to? Because I think even if there is some disagreement, you can still, with all of these issues that we talk about on the local level, there's so much, it's not always black or white in the same way that things can be, one thing or the other in national politics. So I think especially at the local level, if you are able to deliver your opinion and thoughts in a way that is constructive and supported by data and evidence, you'll more often than not get a few people on that decision body who are like, that was a good point. Like, maybe I don't agree with going in that direction, but maybe there's something that we can something that we can incorporate from what that person said, that we can address it, because it's likely if you have that concern, probably some other reasonable people do as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Any other questions about how to structure your testimony? We're actually a little bit ahead of time, so.
Jane, they don't respond between testimonies, right?
That's a good question. Sometimes they will, not often, because they really they don't want to be there all night. These are often in the evenings. But sometimes they will, if there's like a particularly profound one, or especially if young people testify, like especially if it's not a usual suspect who has come out. Like for example, for the subdivision staging policy public hearing before the planning board, I got a high schooler from one of the education equity groups to come out and testify about it. And so they took a moment after that to be like, thank you for your testimony. So I think that, yeah, they'll sometimes take a moment to be like, hey, like that was a notable thing that like this person came out and testified. Or if you say something that that person really agrees with, they might stop and be like, I agree with that, and this is why. More often than not, they won't, but it's been known to happen.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, after I testified to the governor that one time, he responded afterwards and was like, we are funding transit. We're building the purple line. And I was like, well, that's not quite enough. It's always frustrating when they respond and it's not supportive, and then you don't really have a chance to respond after that. All right, I think I'll move on. there's something in the chat. Denise said yes. She was at that same governor public hearing before the Board of Public Works. All right, so
I'm gonna say prove it.
yeah, right. Okay, so I guess I forgot to include a picture for this slide, but now we're going to talk about the content of the testimony. So a little bit more with guiding questions. I talked before about one thing to start thinking about is how does this affect you is usually the number one thing that you want to think about. But some other things to think about are what do you care about? We all care about a lot of different things, but when we only have 3 minutes, what for you really rises to the top as the number one thing that we need to be talking about? Is it climate change? Is it, you know, stopping people from dying on our roads? Like what is it that's the number one thing to you? And then some questions that are a little bit more specific to Thrive 2050 and the general plan is what do you want your neighborhood to look like in 30 years? Do you want it to be a place that you have to get into your car to drive everywhere, or do you want to be able to walk to the end of your street and pick up a bus that comes every 5 minutes? And on the flip side of that, what are you worried about? Are you worried that you won't be able to live in Montgomery County in 30 years because it's way too expensive? Or if you do, you're going to have to live way out in the middle of nowhere where you definitely can't get a bus that comes every 5 minutes. I might be projecting some of my personal worries onto that one. Some other worries might be maybe not for yourself, but for other people. Hey, maybe I have been a longtime homeowner in Silver Spring, but I'm worried that younger people are not going to have the same opportunities that I did to live in this place and send their kids to great schools, and they won't be able to have the same amenities and access to opportunity that I did and my kids did. And then specifically for Thrive 2050 and planning board hearings, what challenges have you had related to housing or transportation in your life? And then finally, what is the proposed impact on you and your neighbors? So those are just a few things to think about, but really it's your time to say whatever you want. So now, and I think we've had a good time for this. We're at 7:40, so we've got about 20 minutes left. We have created a guide to you to the public hearing draft of Thrive Montgomery 2050. It is a very big document, the draft of Thrive 2050. There's a lot in it. It took me several weeks to read through all of it, although that's because I was reading a little bit every day, so I don't want to scare anybody away who might be interested in actually digging into it. But it isn't something that you can, you know, just read quickly on your lunch break, although you can read the parts of it that you're interested probably on your lunch break. So like I said before, there are 8 issue areas that Thrive 2050 is looking at, and those are the chapters that they've broken the general plan down into. So there, to start off, is sort of like an introduction and context, talking about what the issues are, where Montgomery County has been, like why we need a general plan. There's a lot of stuff up front about that. But then the actual chapters where they talk about the vision for the county and the goals and actions and policies that we want to see are broken down into these 8 chapters of those dark blue boxes. So we've broken our recommendations down into those 8 chapters. And Emily has put the presentation in the chat so that you will be able to see all of this. And if she can put that in again, that would be great, because these are kind of hopefully your notes and guidance going forward, although we hope to create even more materials to help people out before the public hearing in November. So you can read the full draft plan here. This section of the presentation, for when you open it up on your computer, is in the blue planning board font. So that will hopefully differentiate it from the green and orange font of my presentation. Or I guess it's all my presentation, but of this part specifically. So all of these parts here, I'll stop sharing everything. So you can see on the side over here, all of these parts broken down into the 8 chapters are broken down into things that you could be excited about and things that you could maybe like to see. And this is of course based off of my reading, although I also shared this with some of CSG's partners to see if there were things that I maybe missed. So each section has some things that I think are pretty exciting. Like, let's see, for example, in the safe and efficient travel section, I'm pretty excited about not building more highways or widening any more roads. But I was pretty surprised and would like to see a mention in this very big document to the importance of frequent transit. If you control F in Thrive 2050, frequent does not appear at all, or frequency or anything like that. And that seems like a really important goal, especially for, excuse me, safe and efficient transit. Hold on, I'm gonna go on mute. Okay, sorry about that. I've been talking too much, which is good because I'm about to stop talking. So we have each of the 8 goals here, and then also the implementation section and the general comments for just some of the mainline things that I thought were important to say in general about the draft. These are some of the main ideas in the draft that I think are really exciting. The fact that it's embracing sustainable urbanism, that it's talking about evolving single family neighborhoods near transit, that is huge. And that's something that I would encourage each and every one of you to say that you support in your testimony. But I think it could use some more discussion about racial and economic segregation. It talks a little bit about redlining and how we got there, but it doesn't really talk about the time between the 1960s and 2020 when there were still policy and planning decisions that further entrenched racial and socioeconomic segregation. So I think that there could be a better accounting of those decisions to sort of, not necessarily to, to rein out the county for its decisions, although there's the time and place for that, but to identify what we did wrong so that way we know what not to do again and what we should do better. And then I was also really surprised that there was no map in this draft plan about where future growth should go. There's a lot of talk about, we need to focus our growth along major corridors, but there is no map to show what corridors those are. I mean, if you're familiar with the county, you can probably discern like, oh, that's going to be 355 and Beers Mill and the 29 corridor, but there's no map similar to this map from the 1993 update that sort of shows, not specifically neighborhood by neighborhood, like what every place is going to look like, but generally, where are we focusing growth? Is it in the corridor cities? Is it in Poolsville? No, probably not in Poolsville. But it's going to be, around the Beltway and along some of those major corridors there. So now I'm going to stop talking for a little bit, and I see that several of you are opening up this worksheet or this presentation. And for the last 15 minutes here, I'm going to let you open up a Word document, and I'm going to let you open up a Word document and start writing out your testimony. This is it, your free writing period to actually start looking at this stuff and thinking about it, because I know that it's really hard to find that time. And so since you found the time to be here tonight, which I'm really grateful for, you can use that time now to start getting ready for your testimony, and also for asking any other questions. So this next 15 minutes here will really be kind of silent. I might turn off the recording in the Facebook Live. And it's just your ability to write and to ask questions to the group. There are a lot of people here, as we saw before, who have testified before. And so if you'd also be interested in asking them questions about their experience, you can totally do that. So this is a bit more of a unstructured time intentionally.
I do have one more question, if I could.
Sure. Yeah, please do. Exactly.
So it's like content-wise. So to what? And I'm not sure if this is something maybe you can go either way depending. But what would you say to, like, if we see something that we like in Thrive, but or in this case it's somewhat Thrive, somewhat the Silver Spring plan, but like see it broader. Like I know there's the plan to push for missing middle housing, like in the single family home area adjacent to Silver Spring, right? in a perfect world, I would like to see there be no single family exclusive zoning in Montgomery County. Is putting that in gonna like make it sound greedy and dismiss things? Is that a good thing to put in? Like how greedy should we get about the specific thing we want, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to like be supportive upfront about what's in there, and this is my political opinion, I guess, about what is best for us as a group of like-minded people to be pushing for. I think we should be really supportive of the language that's in there first and foremost, so that that's really clear to the people who are making potentially politically risky decisions by going forward with that. And then also saying like, then sort of like couching that language and being like, I would like to see it be even stronger if possible about eliminating single family zoning throughout the entire county. We can still set our goals for where we want to see growth to be in those areas near transit and the high capacity transit corridors. But I think that single family zoning is wrong for XYZ reasons. So I think it's important to sort of like back up that claim to sort of help make the argument. But like first and foremost, say that you really like the direction that this is going, because it is pretty big that they're like even talking about transitioning those neighborhoods.
Right, and show the appreciation and like, hey, we hard decisions and all that. No, it's a tough call, but here's my right. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Totally.
Thank you.
Let's see, we've got some questions in the chat. Paul asked, do you want me to read what you wrote, Paul, or do you want to talk yourself?
Sure, yeah. When I've been at other presentations on this topic, one thing that has come up from time to time, and I've seen maps that show that there's really a relatively very small percentage of buildable land that is not agriculture reserve and is not off limits for other reasons, that is actually eligible to have anything other than single family housing built on that. And I was wondering whether there's anything specific in Thrive in Thrive Montgomery that will expand the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so Thrive 2050, the general plan, won't technically change zoning, but it will allow for those zoning changes to happen in the future. So I guess the way when I was trying to understand like what is possible with Thrive 2050 and I was talking to planners, the example that they gave is that when they were recently doing the Veers Mill corridor plan, they wanted to allow for a lot more sort of mid-rise, like missing middle along the Veers Mill corridor, especially since so many of the single family homes along that road have been converted into either legal or, zoningly illegal businesses, because it's not super pleasant to have a single family house right up against a highway. But it's more pleasant to have a 4 or 5 story apartment building there, or even a 3-story, sixplex or something. But they couldn't do that because it was not supported by the general plan. So you really sort of have to have that underlying support of the general plan saying, yes, this is where growth should go. Yes, this is the type of growth we want to see in that place in order to make those zoning changes in master plans down the line. So in that way it can be kind of unsatisfying. Like this is not the end, but it still is really important for that reason.
Okay, thank you.
Mark had some good advice, and he is a Rockville council member, so he really, can speak from the other side of the pulpit. What do you want to say in the conversation, Mark? What you wrote in the chat?
Yeah. Yes, I spoke to the Rockville County Council probably 30 or 40 times before I became a council member. And that's why I wrote the thing about rehearsal, because if you have a lot to say in 3 minutes, you really need to rehearse it. Otherwise, you're leaving half your speech behind. Secondly, I've been on the receiving end of extraordinarily negative public commentary about me personally. And it didn't change my mind, but what it did, it makes it difficult for the person to actually understand what you're trying to say policy wise. So, because we're all human after all. So I try to filter through that, but if you want it, it's really about policy. It's not about you or the decision maker. It's about policy in the future. If I mention anybody by name, it's in a positive sense. If I have a criticism of something and somebody has had a policy that I oppose, I don't mention the person, but I will mention the policy. I don't agree with such and such, but I'll leave the person's name out because you're trying to persuade. So that's just practical stuff.
That is some great advice.
And can I answer Brigida's question about do the county in Rockville and Gaithersburg, do we coordinate our master plans? The answer is we watch each other warily. We understand what the others are up to, but one of the reasons to be a municipality is to have your own planning authority. So a municipality does not always want to be exactly in line with the county. And keep in mind, Rockville is 13.5 square miles. The county, I don't know how many hundreds of square miles, but it's totally different situations. We're totally urban and built out. The county has so much space that we don't have. So we're going to have some things different. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for answering that, Mark. Glad to have you here. Any other questions or people who want to share their experience testifying and what it was like? Totally okay if not. I understand that you're all hard at work at your testimony right now, so.
I had a comment, just something that I've kind of experienced when I'm testifying, is we had talked earlier about kind of like your tone when you testify and whether you can, be, I guess, more like aggressive or like what you should ask for. And I just wanted to point out that there's, I think, a difference between an aggressive tone and aggressive asks. And like a clear and like stern request, right? Like, I don't think that, like Mark just said, it should never be personal, and, you should never sound angry, because once you're angry, people just stop listening to you. But I think it's totally acceptable to say, this county has an obligation to protect human life, right? Or, it is unacceptable that state highways, endanger hundreds of people, right? Like, I don't think it's like these are, clear and I think, stern things to say, but I don't think that they're things that, would offend anybody personally. And I think that having your kind of thesis be short and impactful is important. You don't want to be mean, but you also don't want to have a meandering testimony where you're like, I've had situations where I felt uncomfortable and various roads throughout the county, right? You can kind of like, and that's why I think it would be nice if the council made maybe a little safer, right? You can like take forever, or you can say unsafe roads are unacceptable. So, I think just pointing out that difference is important, and it's something that I try to include in my testimony.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a super important distinction, that you can have a, strong tone without, yeah, I think that's a good point.
So I saw that you kind of put in a few of the missing pieces at the ends of some of the slides. Are there any like super glaring things that like you really want everybody to hone in on, or or is it more like it's a great plan and kind of each person take the missing thing that speaks most to you?
I think that the mainline thing that I would like for Montgomery for All members to talk about is that they are really supportive of it, because it's pretty amazing what has been put in here. So I think on that general comment slide, the excited about section, because really, this plan isn't, like I said, going to make zoning or policy changes, but it's going to guide where we're going into the future. So the fact that it's sort of guiding us in the way that it is right now, I think is pretty remarkable. So I think being positive is really good. I don't know if there's really any critiques that I think are really important for everybody to message. I mean, I think, yeah, like if you're somebody who really cares about like transportation, you can look at like the complete communities and safe and efficient travel section. Or if you're somebody that really cares about the environment, I think there's a lot of room for improvement in the healthy and sustainable environment section, and that might be one of the weakest ones. Denise gives a thumbs up. And I think that there's a lot more to do there, especially because healthy and sustainable environment it's kind of making a section all about one of those three lenses, which they said that they weren't going to do. But of course, like the environment is such like a big topic that it really needs to include a lot more stuff. So yeah, I don't think that there was anything that I saw that was too glaring. I mean, the things in the Montgomery for All platform that really aren't here, that we specifically called out is I think more in the housing section about the protection for vulnerable communities. I was pretty disappointed to see in the housing section a lot of great stuff about building more housing, transforming single family neighborhoods that are near transit. But I kind of was disappointed to see that there wasn't really much big thinking about about like how to make housing attainable for people who are of the lowest incomes. And I think that, of course, like, housing is not a silver bullet. You have to do market things and non-market policies and investments in order to make sure everybody is housed. And so I think that they've done a really great job on sort of the market solutions and building more housing, but all the policy prescriptions were basically like, yeah, like keep adding money to the housing trust fund, like maybe make a few tweaks to the moderately priced dwelling unit program, just basically continuing and strengthening our existing programs and not really thinking, like there's no galaxy brain thinking about like how to really transform housing in the county. But they like to talk about that in the visioning section about housing as a human right. But you can't, I don't know, to me it feels weird to say housing is a human right and then not like fundamentally like rethink, homelessness services. Instead just saying like, oh, we'll add more permanently supportive housing. I don't know. I think that there could be some more bold thinking there.
Some meat around that.
Yeah.
That's probably where I'll focus. So Jane, just in terms of written testimony, is there sort of a useful length? Or a written testimony to be effective really shouldn't exceed X number of pages? I think I lost.
Jane may have been disconnected, it looks like.
Oh, my question really threw her off.
It did. I can take a stab at this, Mark Bershela.
Hi, Mark.
If you have a longer piece, it's good to have an executive at the start. Because that's often all that gets read. But then if somebody wants more detail, you can say for point such and such, see section such and such down below, if they want the more detail.
Okay.
but I've received, you know, hundreds on a particular topic, hundreds of email, and it's hard to read them all for any in depth. You're at that point when you get so many emails, you're just trying to understand the gist of people's arguments, and you're not really diving into a lot of depth, unless somebody really perks your interest on something, and then to have that available is nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey guys,
Okay.
this is Emily. I'm the comms assistant at CSG, and Jane just texted me to let me know
I'm
that
back.
the internet. Oh, she's back. Hi, Jane.
Yeah, I was like, wait, did the meeting like kick me out because it's 8 p.m. and it's like, no, my internet's just being terrible. But I guess that was good timing. Sounds like you all were chatting amongst yourselves. So.
All's resolved. The world is safe now.
All right, any last things since it is 8 o'clock?
This is a great session.
Thank you.
This is Denise with AMS. I just have one last comment for Jeff's question about submitting written testimony. So one tip I have is just make it really easy for the reader to read your points. So maybe even make it a bulleted list or bold items, or I don't know, some way to like break down the information really easy for whoever's reading your comments to just quickly go through it, and just make use of footnotes too if you have like a link to a resource or material that you're citing. I think that's really helpful.
Thanks, Denise. That's exactly what I said when my internet kicked me off. So.
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And like I said, I will be reaching out to tell you all when to sign up the moment that you're able to sign up. So you will be hearing from me hopefully very soon. And thanks again for taking the time to join us here tonight. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you,
Good night.
Jane.